Welcome back to a Weekly Manga Podcast book club series where we deep dive and explore the weekly shonen magazine series GACHIAKUTA by Urana. My name is Bruce. I am the proprietor of the White Gray Black YouTube channel, and I am, of course, joined by my constant co-host, Gautam.
Hey, hey.
This week we are covering Volume 7 of the series, which is chapters 50 through 58. Let's start with some quick thoughts on the volume. I'll go first. This volume blew me away. We talked about how much we liked last volume. I think that was our favorite, Volume 6 there. I think especially the start of this volume, there are some artistic choices and style things that Urana does in this volume that I don't know if I've ever seen someone do better than her, which really, really blew my mind. I was super impressed. The back half of the volume slows down a little bit, but I think that's good. I think this is the second volume in a row where I had a hard time not just keeping reading it because it was so good and I really wanted to keep reading. So yeah, super, super impressed by Volume 7 here. Gautam, how did you feel about it?
I loved it. I thought it was the best volume so far, even though I said that about the last volume. I thought this one was even better. And yeah, every part of it was good. I love the back half as well, like you mentioned, is I think before this volume, if you asked me if I had a favorite character up until this point, I would have said maybe Engine. Not sure. I like a lot of them. But I think I don't think I ever thought of Zanka as like being on the list. But yeah, I think Zanka was like such a standout that to this point, I think he might be my favorite. That may change as we go, but yeah, I really liked his stuff this volume.
Yeah, and we'll get into it, but he even calls himself like, I'm just like a normal, like a normal guy, like just a normal dude. And then that's kind of how I felt about him before this, but like that he's breaking out of that, which is really cool. So
yeah, very cool stuff.
Cool. Let's jump into the chapters. Let's start with chapter 50. Then we are immediately jumping into Jabber versus Zanka first. It looks like again, cool action. Also, the title of this chapter, Glubrochi, is some of the titles of these chapters are really funny. So
yeah, with the glub poison and the little roach.
And the roach, yeah. Also just a cool, like, again, like I mentioned, I'm gonna gush about one particular thing that happens, I think, in these first 3 or 4 chapters. But just the sort of stylized paneling of like a word, Zanka's staff, like some more words, Jabber's blades, like the back and forth there visually is really very cool. And like, yeah, the action in this is really good. We have talked about how few fights there have been in GACHIAKUTA so far. Before these, there's really only 2 big fights that have happened in 50 chapters. And now there's really only 3 fights. There's like a little, like 3.5 fights maybe, but
we're going to get more.
Yeah, well, and the action paneling and all the action stuff is really good here, especially in this one. This is a really, again, every splash panel is awesome here. So
yeah, it's like, it's funny because we're probably gonna call out like 1 or 2 panels for being amazing, but it's like everything.
It's all good, yeah,
spectacular. And we would just spend like 3 hours gushing about every single detail if we had the bandwidth to do so. But yeah, just know that everything looks fucking phenomenal here.
Yeah, for reference, when I am grabbing pictures to bring to the podcast, I will like read the pages and like right click open a new tab, like every picture that I think I want to bring. And usually I'll end up with like, out of 24 pages or so, I'll end up with like 8 to 10. And then, I'll cut it down to usually about 5 or 6. Some of these chapters I like had like 15 pages open and I was like, oh man, I have to cut some of these. I don't want to cut any of these. They're all so good.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so Jabber versus Zanka, there's something bubbling up under the ground, I think Zanka mentions. And Jabber like coats his claws in them. And he sort of explains he does the power explaining shonen battle action thing. It's like his right claws can like absorb new neurotoxins if he tries them on himself. So he takes the bubbling goop from the ground and like sticks it into himself, and then he can like manifest it in his claws, which is cool.
Yeah. So anything he sadistically or masochistically like uses on himself, he like dips a part of his hand into this bubbling acid, and he's like, ow, 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 ow. Okay. and then he injects it in his claws. So his left claws are for anything he homebrews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's Jabber is just such a fucking delight.
He's great,
to
man.
See on
like
screen.
this is a great like bad guy.
Yeah,
all the bad guys are
so
great.
entertaining.
We're definitely cutting to another bad guy who I like, because I think after this we cut to, oh god, I had to write her name down. We cut to Rio
Fantasia.
and Guita Hebi Fantasia, who this is actually like the only time we see her in the whole volume, I think. But
yeah,
I think she'll be back.
Oh, definitely. Even though she doesn't have an opponent to fight. She's the only her who's not paired off.
Yeah, her and Rio are together, so I think both of them are going to fight the hair girl. So,
are they together? They're not in the same room.
I think. Oh, maybe they're not. Maybe it's just a reaction thing here. I thought they were,
because no, Fantasia was put in like a separate room, and she's like, "Am I alone here?
What's going on?" Okay, I missed that. But yeah, that makes sense.
They just kind of react like the same way, but to the Rochi, but opposite, I guess. They both call it a Rochi though.
Yeah. It's funny though. Rio and her female opponent here, I like this whole page is great. Let's see. Yeah, the girl baddie like makes fun of her here. And Rio's like, normally I'm fine with bugs, okay? Cockroaches tend to sneak up on you. She's like, what? Like, you're kidding, right? You live on the ground with a bunch of trash, and you're a cleaner, and you are scared of cockroaches.
I like that these villains are all kind of also like all of her heroes are like just shit talky and kind of like casual about things, but so are the villains.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. They all feel like really human to me.
Yeah, nobody's
in a good way.
Like too serious at any one time, or like if they are really serious, it's I don't know. It's like Zanka is maybe like the most serious person, and even he's like kind of goofy and stuff. So.
Yeah.
But it's great. We get so this is I think one of the first instances here where something cool happens. This is the thing that I'm really going to call out the next couple of chapters that I mentioned that I really liked. The transitions between scenes and the way that they're set up in like dialogue and visuals is maybe the best I have ever seen an action battle shonen jump between fights. Because, for instance, this is the first time it happens, or maybe the second time it happens, but Rio is talking here about, like, blah, 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 I don't mind getting dirty. It's like, oh, but there is one person in the cleaner who doesn't like getting covered in mud. And then it cuts to Zanka, who we know got really stressed out about it. And that's the first of many, like, transfers between these scenes that are, like, they're like tied together with a thought, and it's like so cool. And like
I love that too. And it wasn't even mud. It was like it's like when he got a little poo on him.
Yeah, he got some poo on him.
And Zanka mentions how Jabber's like poisons don't scare him, because he was so traumatized from the poo, like getting literal crap on my uniform.
Yeah, he's
from like, when he went Rudo in like chapter.
It's like at least it doesn't poop, but
yeah. And this is like one of the most badass Zanka moments right here.
Yeah.
Is his table flip.
Fucking earth flipping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Absolutely sneeze.
I love Jabber's like reaction to it too is also good.
I know. Jabber's just like psychopathic enjoyment reaction from the table flip here.
Yeah, it's super great. Again, the cutting between the fights thing is something that comes up like a lot. So yeah, that's it for chapter 50.
This one was like a very funny start to a chapter because it cuts to Engine's fight with
the portal kid.
Dude. This is not, I don't think this is the portal guy.
Is
the
portal guy's
in the portal guy's in the tubes taking notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is some other guy. We don't know what his name is yet, but it's just Engine starting like he's like sees the kid hiding.
Hey.
Yeah, I like how he has like sibling energy with everyone he interacts with.
Yeah,
you know,
he's got,
just like he's like trying to annoy the kid into like interacting with him by being like Navi, where he's like, hey, listen, hey. And the other guy looks like absolutely annoyed by him, and then you see his thought bubble, And he's like, this dude is so freaking
He's like,
awesome.
this guy is so cool. Yeah, it's such a cool way to display Engin's like power that we haven't seen. Right, is that he doesn't care who he's going up. Like he doesn't care who he got stuck with. If it's one guy or 10 guys, like he's acting casual because he knows that it doesn't matter. And like to me, that's a cool way to be like, okay, Engine. Like everyone else is sort of like Zonka's fighting, Rio's like sizing up her opponent. The other people we cut between later are like they're taking it seriously, even if they're kind of jokey. But Engine is like. He does not care who he's going up against. He doesn't care what their power is. He knows he can beat them, and so he's very just sort of like, hey, what is this place? Tell me what's going on.
He's acting like a shithead because he's absolutely confident that he'll smoke whoever he fights.
Yeah, exactly. So we cut then to Dear Santa and Bro Santa versus Cowboy Guy, who is our favorite from last volume.
And he's awesome in this volume. He's cool.
Yeah. And this is here's example 2 of another great cut between scenes, right? Is they're talking to him, they're like, what's going on here? The Cowboy Guy is like, go ahead, try your choker. And then we cut, I don't think I have every cut here, but we cut to Rio trying her choker and being like, it doesn't work. Which is like, it's such a simple thing, but it just ties the 2 scenes together, and it means that the flow between them, like, I don't know, man. It's fucking magically good in this volume.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes every scene feel connected when they're completely different scenes talking about, similar but different things. So yeah, I love that a lot.
And I think it also like, it's like a little bit of neat world building that shows their cell phones, aka chokers, don't work underground, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it does a lot with just one line. But yeah, I guess we're cut back to the Rio fight, not the Bundes fight.
So we cut back here to the Rio fight. She has a large like styling hair comb or whatever. And we get her name, which the names are getting away from me here. This is Noir de Hugh Amozo. I think I'll call her Amozo. Is probably the best name here. Which is, again, a wild name, but she also has a sick design we mentioned last time. She fights, we'll learn about how she fights a little bit later. But her versus, so we get sort of like a hair comb versus scissors, which they call out to, I think, in the chapter of like, oh, this is interesting. I thought this was a fucking sick move where she like swings the handle past Amozo and then like slams them shut over her, so it's like a double like attack thing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Amozo immediately after is like, "Oh, cool move," and I was like, "Yeah, it fucking was. That was awesome."
And there's something Rio says right before is like, "Oh, so you use your hair to fight, presumably." Mm-hmm. It's like, well, scissors versus hair, not exactly a fair fight. And then she does his move, and yeah, we can continue from here.
Yeah. We're back to, so we get sort of the Jabber power up here, which is like, I don't even know how to describe it. He's just like bigger claw, like he has like bigger claws.
His claws have claws.
Yes, his claws have like, it's like X3, right? Like his claws have claws attached to them. Yeah. And we get the cool Zonka's like, after all he put me through, like he wasn't even fighting for keeps. He's like, Zonka, he's like, oh, I see, you are strong. Like I will go all out. You can go all out too.
And I think Zonka, there's like a panel where he's like, okay, but I'm all out of tricks. Like
yeah. I think that might be next chapter, but yeah, it's it's cool. There's another good cut here too, where it's like cutting between both of the fights, Zonka and Ryu. Both of their enemies being like, you weren't giving it all you've got either, were you? It's like, hey, let's fight for real. Like both of their fights sort of take an upgrade to the next level here, which I think is cool. And again, connects the 2 scenes together between the fights when you're jumping between fights is very cool and very skillful. And I like it a lot.
Yeah. And we cut to Rio being like dropped by this.
Yeah, we don't know what happened, but Amozo has beaten her in a small way at least. So next chapter 52. We start here with Ryu and Amozo. Rio's like, oh, I can't move. What's going on? And we learn then that her power is electric hair from static electricity of using a plastic. Apparently, if you have really long hair and you use a plastic comb on it, it just like generates static electricity. So her power is super creative. Like this is maybe the most creative power so far, I think, which is like very cool. It's like, oh, big plastic comb use it on her hair. Hair becomes electric. Fight with hair. Like
It's also like a dope looking panel. Yeah,
it's great. Yeah, this reminds me more than anything of some of the powers in Fire Force that Okubo did. Fire Force has a lot of like, you think, oh yeah, the first couple people you're like, oh fire powers, and then later you're like, oh, like some of these powers are like not related to fire, they're just related to heat, and then later on you're like, okay, but heat is energy, and some of these powers are just related to like control of energy, and they are like if you said that is a fire power, everyone would be like, that's not related to fire at all. But it's like fire is heat, is energy, and if you can control energy, that's how the powers in Fire Force come about. And that's this reminds me of it. It's not exactly the same, but it's like, oh, an incredibly creative way to use like, I have an empowered X thing, and that means, you know, it flows from like, I have a large empowered plastic comb, and that means that when I brush my hair, which would generate static electricity, I generate real massive bolts of electricity. It's so cool.
Like, this is Bayonetta vibes. I like it. It's fucking sick.
It's really cool. Let's see. Yeah, so we cut again to the Cowboy Man versus the Santas.
The villain serves Rio's line back up to her at this point, where she's like, yeah, electric hair versus scissors, not exactly a fair fight, huh?
Oh yeah. Because she had said that like scissors versus hair, haha, I win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's good. All the interactions are great. But yeah, we cut over to Bro and Dear Santa here talking to the cowboy guy. I think we finally learn. I think it's here. Yeah, there's like some dad connection stuff. They talk to each other. We learn here that I think like Dear Santa can't talk is what I'm getting, because he hasn't said anything. He's communicating.
I think it's a pacifier. I think if he removes it, he has to use his power or whatever.
Oh, maybe it's like the sushi guy from Jujutsu Kaisen, right? That like speaks his magic if he like says an ingredient or whatever. Yeah, you might be right. It might be like he removes the pacifier, and like if he says something, it because we learned that he's like 10 years old.
He said okay, yeah. So here's what I think, right? Like I think he always looks annoyed to everyone else, right? I think his dad is the only. They established they have a father-son relation. Dear and Bro Santa. Bro Santa's his dad. Bro Santa seems to be the only one who can understand what he feels. Because he just looks annoyed by everything, despite them representing different emotions, even though to everyone else he just looks annoyed. I think when he first met Rudo, he wanted to be friends because he's the only other kid his age. Mm-hmm. And he just looked like he was mean mugging him, and Rudo didn't get it.
Yeah, I could buy that totally.
Yeah. Because his dad here says, Rudo's been on your mind ever since he came to the cleaners. That's why you followed him here, right? And then Dear Santa looks very annoyed, and he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. So that's his embarrassed face. This is pissed off.
It's like, just another sort of pissed off face. Yeah. We learned that our cool cowboy guy, his name is Bundus. Not a great name, Bundus. I will admit. Of all the cool names you've gotten, Bundus is not my favorite. But man, he looks like, again, every volume, the designs in this are so sick. Like, this guy looks so cool. His giant pauldron is awesome.
He looks fucking great.
Yeah, I like this is I like this whole encounter because it's like two dad figures kind of like talking to each other, and there's not really any tension in what they're saying, but there's like thought bubbles from Bro, and there's like there clearly is some tension just because of the situation, but like it's a very kind of calm conversation they have over the next couple of chapters, and that's
why Bro Santa's kind of troubled here. He says this is not easy because the guy's Bundus is being very kind of affable and nice. One cool thing about Bundus's costume is that, his leggings and his what do you call that thing in the back? His ass flap. They're like the same material that Noert
that Emozo has, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I do wonder.
So, I think it's just consistency among the readers. Like having a similar aesthetic.
Well, and I'm trying to think, does Zonka have any of that on him? I don't think so.
Or,
he does. Like his chest, or Jabber, sorry.
Has it, yeah.
I guess his chest is made of the same material. Yeah, so that is just like, God, it just like, every time you look at the designs more closely, you're like, yeah, the Raiders do share a design. We'll have to see when we get to Zodal if he's got some too. I bet he probably does.
I didn't notice. We'll have to see.
Yeah. This is cool though. There's like, bro is like, I sense no hostility from you, Bundus. And then Bundus asks like, hey, tell me about Corvus, the leader of the cleaners. And it's like, that's cool because when we were first introduced to him, I think at the end of volume 2, we had some questions about this guy too, right? And we're told that none of the cleaners know what his vital instrument is and that he's the leader and he has interesting tattoos. We'll see those kind of come into play in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we sort of start getting a display of Bundus's powers, which we see this weird like creature mechanic finger thing show up.
Yeah, it's like a USB finger walking thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and his shoulder is, I think, his vital instrument, and it's like pieces of robots crawling out, but they're like creatures. I don't know. It's sick. It's cool. It's awesome again. This is like one of my favorite full page panels from the whole thing, just because this is not what I expect. Like, you don't expect him to ask about this, right? He's like, okay, I'm gonna ask you, like, oh, he'll ask about like Rudo or like where's the cleaner's base, or something stupid. It's like it like introduces more intrigue that we had introduced 5 volumes ago in volume 2 of like, oh yeah, we don't know a whole lot about the boss, but he's the boss, and he shows up and is kind of very like knows things maybe he shouldn't, and then it's like, okay, this guy is introducing more intrigue by asking about the boss. I like that.
And it's putting the question in the audience's mind as well. Like, why is the boss so mysterious, right? Like, but yeah, it's a very cool panel. I think this is like, I don't know, some from soft shit I'm seeing here with all these fingers.
Yeah. But man, this is another thing I think that is just like so expertly sort of planned and designed around all of the fights that we're getting, is that we have like, right now we're sort of looking at 4 different fights, right? And they're all in different stages of the encounter. And that means that you aren't jumping from like this person's high energy to this person's high energy. Like they all aren't fighting at the same time, right? Like Zanka and Jabber are fighting, like they are in it.
Yes.
Rio and Amozo are like, they were fighting and they're in a break right now. Bro Santa and Bundus are not fighting yet, but it's sort of racketing attention. To about to get there. And then we kind of have Engine where it's like, I don't think he's going to fight anytime soon, but maybe. Like that one doesn't seem close to fighting. So
yeah, they have the funniest dynamic. I'm not sure what's happening there. And then we have Zodal, who is just kind of explaining his world view to Rudo. As we see here soon, in kind of a fucking hardcore way. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but I just wanted to call out the fact that it's like, it is better to read something. I think we talked about this. We talked about this on the Weekly Podcast, mainly discussing the sort of end of not necessarily the very end of My Hero, but some of the last parts where it's like, it was just high energy the whole time and we never got a break from it. Whereas in chapters like this chapter, where we're jumping from, or like this chapter and last chapter, right, where we're getting like high energy fights and then we cut to sort of, a break in this fight and then a lower energy. They're having a conversation, but racketing up tension here. There's some Engine in this chapter too, where there's, pretty low energy. Those things really help pacing and feeling, because you aren't overwhelmed with just action the whole time, jump to another person who's doing action the whole time. I was not expecting it to be so like skillfully executed. I'll be honest, this is like better than some of the Fire Force. There are a lot of Fire Force fights where it's 2 or 3 people fighting. This is like better than those in my opinion. Like she has improved upon it. So next chapter, I don't know why, but we have curse words on screen.
Holy fucking beautiful world.
Yeah. Well, I've seen, I follow Urana on Twitter, and she'll tweet the F word a lot. So, another cool design, great art as always. And this is what we ended the last chapter with, was like your boss, Arca Corvus. Who is he? And so again, connecting scenes together, even across chapters very coolly. The thing we start with in the next chapter is the boss, Arca Corvus, in his office, where his tattoo eye moves, which is cool and interesting.
Yeah.
And so we get Seimu here. Why is his tattoo eye moving? I took that note. maybe this is an enchantment from one of the artists, or maybe this is part of his power. Those are kind of the two.
That's it. That's exactly what I was wondering. Is this an enchantment, like a special enchantment, or is this like his vital instrument, or is it something else? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and this also sort of plants the idea that we talked about. I don't remember at the end of last volume. Maybe we talked about it after the episode was over, but I have my suspicions that because Fire Force kind of worked this way, and a lot of other series do, where you're sort of introduced to two opposing sides, and then it turns out that they come together versus a third kind of greater threat. Arc of Corvus here strikes me as like maybe he's a bigger bad. Like we're at least being I'm at least being manipulated to suspect him. I think, which is intentional by the author.
I think we all are. Yeah. Exactly. And I think you're more on the money with these characters, these raiders' dispositions. They're all likable.
Yeah, they aren't. Yeah, we mentioned it, I think, last time that when talking about Zodal, is like he's not a mustache twirling evil guy. He seems like reasonable and has goals that make sense. Like the sphere maybe is a bad thing. Maybe it should go down. But they're opposed to our main character team, so that makes them seem like bad guys. When it's like, well, maybe, which leads me to believe even more that I don't think that these characters are going to be sort of the final end bad guys. I think there's going to be a greater threat somewhere, whether it's the masked angel guy or the sphere or the monster between the sphere and the ground or whatever it is. But I'm being led down. My suspicions last volume are kind of being confirmed here of that. There's something else bigger going on that we're getting hints at it.
I agree.
Yeah. Simu calls and tells Corvus here, it's like, hey, like Team Akuta, which is Engine's team, and Team Child are missing. They're kidnapped. We got a call from the supporters. This is just one of these little choices that I think is great writing. Like, you don't have to keep your characters in the dark. Like, the supporters were there. They would know that they got kidnapped. They would call their boss and get more cleaners to help them out. And it's like, yes, this is like, there's no idiot plot here, right? Like everyone is acting smart and reasonably, which I like. Like it's sad that I have to point out and call out when it's like, oh, this person is avoiding idiot plot right now, but like she is, and it's good, and I like it. So
agreed.
Yeah. So we cut back here to back to the Santas and Bundus. Bundus asks all these questions about Corvus. He says like, it's only for my own curiosity. They go through a bunch of kind of weird, meaningless things. And then
meaningless questions.
Yeah. And
on the surface. Yeah.
And Bro Santa is basically like, I don't know any of these. I have no idea. He's never told me.
Except for Corvus's favorite food, which he knows to be sweets.
Yeah. He's like, oh, he likes sweets. And they sort of go back and forth, and then Bro Santa is like, am I hearing things? Like he just like Bundus just told us some really
before that.
Yeah.
Bundus reveals that the Raiders are creating in exchange for answering. He said Bro Santa effectively says, I don't know to the rest of the questions, which are like, what are his powers? What is he like? Like, what does he like to do outside of the job? And Bro Santa's like, I don't know. I've never seen him outside of the job. I don't know his powers. And Bundus is like, okay. So effectively, he didn't get much information. And Bundus is like, okay. The Raiders are creating some trash beasts. That's what we do after we beat you, is we give you to the trash beasts we created. Yeah. And that's when Bro Santa's like, dear Santa, am I hearing things? I think he just blurted out some really important information. And Bundus, he revealed earlier that he's like, he doesn't really care about why they're here. He's just here on orders. But ultimately, he's an individualist who's looking for something.
Yeah, he has some curiosity about Corvus. That is what's driving him. He isn't necessarily driven by the same, like, beat the bad guys, to follow Zodal or whatever. He's like, I'm curious about Corvus. So,
and he said, you gave me some information that's worthy of equivalent exchange. So he told them about the trash beast, like kind of honorably, for a bad guy. And it's as he reveals in the next page, it's the fact that despite him being completely mysterious and unknown to the Raiders and everyone else, the fact that he likes sweets confirms that he is more human than initially anticipated. Which was a question that the Raiders apparently seemed to have. Was he even human at all? Right? I think that's interesting.
Or is he even real? I mean, maybe they think like, oh, they're just making up a leader, that we have the target or something. Here's, okay,
Right.
I made a new connection in my brain formed while we were talking. So it's good foreshadowing to drop important information near, like, sort of hidden next to other information that it's important to without like leading on. Here's a new theory I just developed. Let me hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
We are asking about Corvus and talking about him. And then the information that Bundus gives back to the team is that they're making trash beasts by, he says feeding them cleaners, but I think my guess is that it would be more about feeding them cleaners, vital instruments, right? Because we saw in volume 2 and 3, I think, that at the center of the trash beast is like an anima empowered instrument of some kind. I think that is like tossed away by their owner, and so they feel hatred instead of love or whatever.
Right.
So here's my theory is, what if Corvus is an incredibly advanced trash beast? Like, he is instead of like a giant beast, he is like a human personified, anima driven human.
It's like a homunculus.
Yeah. Or like, he has like basically he's like an incredibly powerful vital instrument that has his own like thoughts and feelings. And that's why they don't know what his vital instrument is, because he is a vital instrument, right? At its core, like the way the trash beast
that
is.
would make sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. That makes sense why his tattoo moved too.
Well, because he's potentially just made up of like, dust and garbage or something. I don't know about that necessarily. Maybe he's like possessing a discarded body, maybe. But that's my theory, in that we are presented with information about Corvus and information about creating trash beasts at the same time. I think they might.
I think you have a good point, right? Because seemingly the information Bundus shared back has some relevancy with what was shared in the first place, right?
It may not. I mean, it's hard to say, because it could just be like, oh, he's giving them information that's going to tie in later somehow. But
let's keep that in our heads, though.
Yeah,
because it might circle back around.
A skilled writer, I think, would make you think like, oh, he gave them some information. Oh, that's cool. That reminds me of stuff a long time ago. But I think a really smart writer would be like, well, let me plant this information right next to where it's really important, next to Corvus, and maybe it ties in. So, yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure, but
I'm not sure either. I like the theory though.
Yeah, that's just, I literally made that connection when you were talking about it. So
right.
So that's basically the end of that scene. We cut back to Zonka and Jabber fighting, talking about how Jabber wants to fight and fight. He doesn't even care about winning or losing. He just wants to keep fighting. So he ends up holding back and stuff. We kind of go through this like, I don't have to hold. Jabber's like, I don't have to hold it back anymore, and so you don't either, because you're just like me. You're strong and you hold back. And then Zonk. Also, this is maybe one of the greatest faces we've ever had. Jabber is great. And this is where we end. And Zonka's like, oh, like he's still got more in him, but that was everything I've got. Like, I'm all out of tricks.
Right, exactly.
Which is a cool ending to the chapter. So,
yeah, I love Zonka. Zonka's cool as fuck.
Yeah, this really, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that this volume focuses more on Zonka and does such a good job of telling his story that I now like Zonka a lot more, which is like obvious, right? Like, the storytelling and writing is so good in this that when they go into a character, it's going to be good. I'm like really, really excited to get backstories for like Engine and Rio and all these other characters who we've like gotten little hints about, but not much. Because Zonka, we had even gotten maybe less hints about his past, and now we're sort of getting, well, we get later on in the volume, we'll see, we get like some of his full backstory. So,
right.
Cool. Next chapter here, we finally get back to
Zodal and Rudo.
Yeah, we finally get back to Zodal and Rudo. Talking about like the garbage, and the big thing that he talks about here is like animals growing up in different places and how they'll evolve differently, and they'll be different because they have different environments. And then This is another weird lore thing that I don't even know what to think about. Zodal says, like, why is it that you, a spherite, have the same eyes as a groundling like me? And it focuses in on Rudo's eyes, which is a thing that we've talked about that often look really cool in panels and look interesting and different. And I have never thought that that was going to be something important, that like the way Rudo's eyes look weird and different. I thought it was a design thing, right? Like, oh, he's just designed weird. But apparently that's important now, which is cool.
Yeah, I think the implication is that Rudo was born on the ground and taken up to the sphere.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's an interesting reveal. Rudo kind of does his good boy shonen protagonist stuff. He's like, I don't need to tag along with you. Like, you just come in here and offer me to do stuff. He's like, I'm gonna go to the sphere on my own terms. I'm gonna find the guys who killed my adoptive dad. Those are the guys I want to beat up. It's like, don't tell me what to say. Don't attack the cleaners. Like, he basically just like shuts down everything.
Though. It's reasonable because it's like, and before this, Rudo's even like, if you had this like grand plan that you wanted me to join in on, why didn't you just fucking talk to me like a human being instead of kidnapping me?
Yeah. It's a great response to the bad guy who's like, come join my master plan, Mr. Good Guy. And he's like, just tell me, like, stop. Why'd you have to kidnap me and separate all my friends and make them fight people? It's like, just tell me about it and ask me. Like, I'm a reasonable dude.
Yeah,
it's great. I guess I didn't grab enough Zodal. I don't know if Zodal has any of that design thing we were mentioning earlier, but
okay, so hold on. Before this panel, this is like a metal panel.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense as to why he does it right before. Is he explains to Rudo, it's like, okay, reasonable and what's normal, right? It's like you people on the ground, there are people who worship the trash that falls out of the sky and force other people to worship it too. And like to them, it's normal to worship trash. What is normal? And what is fanaticism? And he references the fights that are happening. It's like, you fought Jabber, and he shocked this power out of you, like for briefly. And he's like, he's implying, it's like, I wonder if he'll do that for your colleagues as well, or will they just die from the shock? And he's like, he says like, with fanatics, what you have to do to convince them of the reality they're in is to shock it out of their system.
Yeah.
And a cockroach is skittering. He takes the cockroach and bites its head off.
Yeah.
It's fucking disgusting.
A little bit, yeah. I mentioned him not being a mustache twirly villain, and this is like a very mustache twirly villain thing to do, so maybe I was wrong.
No, I thought this part was actually really cool. It is mustache twirly as fuck, but it's like very cool because it's like, he's only biting the head off this cockroach to shock Rudo into understanding the current circumstance.
Yeah.
He's doing it for like, I guess like to make someone understand something, not because he wants to bite the head off a cockroach.
Yeah.
But
I think it's it's really interesting because it isn't even fully about, oh, you're a fanatic who believes that trash is falling from the sky. The way that he describes it is sort of like those fanatics will like impress their sort of culture on people around them until they think that that is normalcy. And then this is why he's like, and you have to shock them out of like the kind of
their
external
normalcy.
Yeah. There's like sort of external pressure of like society has told you to be like this, whatever that is. Like he uses the trash falling from the sky fanatics as an example, but he's also, I think, thinking about like, I think he also sees the darkness inside of Rudo the way that Seimu did. And I think he's trying to be like, that's who you really are, show it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, he's effectively saying there is no normal here in this world.
Yeah, and, for sure. That too.
I thought that was great. And I think the example he used is probably his backstory, where he was probably part of this cult of trash worshippers and had it forced upon him. It would only make sense.
Maybe. I don't know. I think that's just...
Why else would he use it as an example?
Yeah, I mean, it's potential for sure. I think that it's less about the specific example, which maybe is just sort of like bringing world building into the thing. Because he's not... Think so. I don't think he's super concerned about the specific example of people worship trash and I need to shock it out of you for worshiping trash. He's more like people...
I don't think it's about that at all. I think he's just shaking Rudo's sense of normalcy.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What is right and what is wrong. But I'm saying, aside from that, I think he used it as an example because that's tied to his backstory. Because
it's possible. I don't know.
I think it's probable, honestly.
It could be. I mean, I also think that him, we're told that even in this chapter that like the food that falls from the sky is bad, and often, it's hard to get food down here. So my guess is that people on the ground will often eat cockroaches and bugs. Like that seems like a normal thing. And I think he's showing that like you're from a place where this is strange and I'm from a place where this is normal. And so this is shocking to you. And there's lots of weird cultural interaction things here potentially, but yeah. It's definitely possible if he was raised by the trash people that they would eat that if they worship what comes from the sky, they would not want to eat it. Maybe they have to eat cockroaches then. So
I think his hard stance against what he considers to be fanaticism, which is perceived normalcy or like societal customs, it would make sense that he came from a sect that forced that sort of normalcy upon people. I don't know. I think it's just telling of his character. Yeah.
Well, and it also, I didn't grab that panel, but it also, I think in that panel shows like Rudo with the like Spherite police whose name I forgot. Like it very much implies that the thing that he is attacking in Rudo is the like the Spherite culture and customs or whatever that sort of fanaticism he is labeling as is imprinted in Rudo. Because this guy, I mean, as I think we've seen with his, do you want to take the sphere down for me? I think this guy hates Spherites alike. That is his driving thing, is that he does not like Spherites. That's why he calls out, why are your eyes like mine? Let's take down the sphere.
That's why I'm almost positive he was part of this like cult. It just makes sense.
Yeah, or so I think there's like a missing step in there of like, he's part of a cult. Something happens, and so he hates the Spherites because you would think that they would worship them if they're throwing, their religious items down. But yeah, there's definitely more there for sure to explore.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get another cool transition here because, like you mentioned, the end of this kind of speech from Zodal, he says like, "Hey, Rudo, you had your true inner self dragged out in the fight against Jabber, so maybe whoever's fighting Jabber now will also have their true self dragged out." And then we immediately cut to Jabber versus Zanka, which again is just a great connecting scene to scene, great flow, love it a lot. Here we get Zanka doing this fun,
and this is my favorite part of the volume.
This fun internal thing where he's like, "Oh man, he's another one of them." Is like he's one of them geniuses.
Yeah.
And this is cool because of what we've read in the last chapters of this thing, because you already sort of know, like, assuming you've read the whole volume and you're watching this video, like we know that he has experience with this girl later on who is a genius and just outdoes him kind of instantly. And that, shook him to his core. We don't know how exactly in this volume, but, and so, yeah, this is very impactful that he's like, oh, he's a genius. And this is the kind of thing where he's like, and I'm not a genius. Like I'm just a normal guy who's trying really hard. So, but he's also like, that's what makes beating them so satisfying, right? Which is like the cool fucking like hell yeah, Zanka.
Yeah, he doesn't let it demoralize him. I love that.
Yeah, which makes me really curious to see how the backstory we're going to get to soon goes because I mean he again is sort of fighting against another genius in there, and we don't know how it ends in this volume. So, chapter 55.
It's just normal dude versus shonen protag archetype. It's like, well, now let me take off the gauntlets and go even further beyond. And Zanka's just like, okay, well, all right, I'll figure out how to deal with this.
Well, and it's also a very real, like, I don't want to say it's like a real world problem, but it's this thing where I don't know about you, but I feel like I grew up around a lot of people being called like, oh, they're just geniuses, they're just gifted. Like the smart kids group when I was growing up in school was called the Gifted and Talented program, right? Like it wasn't something that was like, these are kids that work harder, even though a lot of them were. It was like, these are the kids they were just born smarter. And so it felt like there was this like insurmountable, I mean, I grew up like mostly in the 90s and early 2000s. There was very much this thought in pop culture, I guess, that you could say where it's like, oh, the people who are really good at things, like they're just made that way. They just got lucky and they're just like that. Whereas the sort of older I've gotten, the more I realize that it's like some people are born into special circumstances that help them get there, but the really, really talented people are working harder than anyone else at it. Something that,
I agree.
And I think that's the cool dichotomy here between Zanka and Jabber.
And I find Zanka's like disposition here to be like relatable, right? Because I think it's like I don't think I'm naturally talented at anything I do. I think
same.
the things I'm good at is I just got good at by repetition and whatever is involved to get good at something. It just takes time and work. And I think that's Zanka in a nutshell.
For sure.
Not he doesn't have like I think some people are like naturally they can learn faster at certain things, but anyone can do anything. It's just you just have to put a lot of effort in sometimes.
Yeah.
It very cool, and I think Zanka's backstory establishes this and kind of this how skewed that mindset is in a few ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like.
Yeah.
I relate to that in a way because we'll get to it later. But yeah, this is someone who I bring up a lot on the podcast just because I think that they're an excellent storyteller and a very sort of mechanically sound is Brandon Sanderson, right? He's a fantasy author. I've read a lot of his stuff. I've heard a lot of his talks about how to design characters and power systems and all this stuff. And something that I really, really respect about Brandon Sanderson that I think mirrors Zanka here is that Brandon Sanderson, I don't want to be like, he's not a good writer. Brandon Sanderson just wrote a lot. He was not born and wrote one book and got it published and everyone loved it, like happens to some people. Brandon Sanderson wrote and wrote and wrote from the time that he was like 14 or 15 until he was, 24, 25 when he got his first book published. He had written like 14 books and tried to sell them all to people, and then he finally got one sold. And I'll be honest, the first book he had is his worst book. He keeps getting better at writing as he keeps writing more, and it is a very I look at that in a very sort of enviable way because Brandon Sanderson to me is, again, not one of these genius people who was, born to be an awesome author and hit it immediately after the first try. He's a guy who had to work his ass off and continually works at being a good writer, at producing good content, at honing his craft and getting better at it. And it takes work from him to do that. And I like that to me is looking at that drives me to be better. Just knowing that, like you mentioned, it's like, just repeating and doing things over and over again is how you have to get better at something. Like, you and I would talk about, story and breaking stuff down, 5-6 years ago. And we're better at it now after doing almost 2 years of this podcast, by the way. We'll talk about the 2-year anniversary. Like almost 2 years of talking about it. Like we're much better at it. I'm much better at, coherently getting my thoughts together. And that's just like you being a hardworking guy and rising to the top in the way that Brandon Sanderson, and I think that we will see Zanka eventually rise to, is so much more satisfying to me as a person than this person was born a genius and they're already way ahead and that's why they're so good. Like I do not enjoy that nearly as much as he's a normal guy and he worked really hard and that's how he got there.
Agreed. I think it's like Zanka is like the refreshing everyman who wants to be the shonen protagonist, but who's not there yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how his fight goes.
Yeah.
We don't finish it out in this volume yet, by the way.
It's definitely he was not born strong, but he is strong and he got there through hard work. And that's like not kind of some shonen protagonists have that, but a lot of times it's not like that, right?
Yeah, usually they have like a gimmick that gets them there.
Yeah, exactly. Or they were born strong. You were born a Saiyan, or you were born king of the
with a 9-tailed fox spirit in you.
Yeah, exactly. You were born to be Hokage, right? Like it isn't a thing. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm sure there is some working hard to get there, but they're almost always born kind of ahead of the starting line from a lot of people. And Zanka feels like, although you get the background that he kind of was, but he still works hard for it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. 55. This is probably like the shortest chapter. This is all action between Zanka and Jabber having a fight. Again, some really good fight stuff in here. I can't, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. I don't even know if there's very much dialogue in this. This is almost entirely just a fight between the two of them. And there's some awesome stuff. I grabbed some cool panels. I really like, again, every spread that happens.
And I think what this fight shows, this chapter, is just the power gap between the two. Mm-hmm. Jabber's just a monster. In every panel he's in, all of his attacks are taking up the majority of the panel. And when you go back to Zanka's point of view, he sees Jabber as this like wide-eyed, dark face like monster. When it's like when Mob Psycho goes like 100% is like what he sees Jabber as.
Yeah, and it's very like the
yeah.
facial expressions here is very much like Zonka is barely holding off. Like Jabber, who said like, "Okay, I'm going full power now," and Zonka's like, "Okay, I'm out of tricks," and so he's barely making it.
Yeah.
And that leads, of course, eventually in this chapter to Jabber winning and knocking him down. I do think it's interesting here at the end that even though Jabber sort of clearly has the win, he doesn't immediately go for the kill, which I think makes sense with what Jabber said earlier, right? It's like he just wants to keep fighting. He doesn't want it to end necessarily.
Well, he kind of does. He has like the killing blow. Then he says, "So it's game over." Then he goes for the kill.
Yeah,
but Zonka catches like the claws with his teeth.
Yeah,
which is badass.
Yeah, so that's basically chapter 55. But yeah, in the next chapter, he goes for it, and then catches a teeth. It's another great panel here.
Yeah.
And something I didn't notice that somehow stands out here is that Zonka's eyebrows are weird.
I didn't notice that either.
I guess, I don't know, I have to go back and look, but his eyebrows are always like that. I guess I just never noticed. It's like a design thing. But his eyebrows, I guess are always like that. Always the weird, 4 marks or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, chapter 56 here, we get, catches the attack with his teeth. It's like, so then we get, let's see, so we finally get, what we've been kind of hinting at leading into is we get a flashback with this kind of samurai looking girl with short hair. And Zonka's like, I can't die until I prove it, which is, I thought that this was just going to be like, oh, we're going to get a hint here and then maybe stuff later. But because this is the first real, I guess the second flashback we've gotten from our main character. It's the first, right? We got Amos, which was very sad. So he's clearly, there is something connecting him to needing to win against someone who's a genius as a normal dude, that has to do with this girl.
This part is cool. He breaks Jabber's ribs with his staff.
Yeah.
Like he spits the teeth back out, flips up, breaks Jabber's ribs, and then does like a kidney punch where the ribs were, and breaks the broken ribs again. And Jabber's like, what a freaking sadist.
It's like, dang, you're messed up, dude. Yeah, there's a cool spinny move. Yeah, this was maybe my favorite move that anyone does in this volume. Is Zonka just does he slams his staff on the ground and then flips over and then does it again and again and again and keeps coming for him. I don't know. This is just such a cool action panel here.
My favorite move is right after this one, where
I must not have it.
That's okay. Basically, Jabber's about to attack him. Zonka sticks his spear in the ground and is about to get hit by the claws, but twirls around and kicks him.
Yes, I remember this. He does
a pole twirl,
like a pole dancer move. Yeah, where you hold yourself horizontally on the pole and swings around. Yeah, I do. I remember that one. That was good. But yeah, sort of the ending of the chapter here. He gets cut by the poison thing at the end on his leg, and Jabber sort of explains. Actually, won't go to that panel. Jabber explains here that it's he can use the last 3 poisons that he's put in his left one. So he's I could use the bloody poison or the. I don't know.
He uses the pain, the neurotoxin,
there you go,
and the acid blood.
That sort of new bubbly thing, that's the one he ends up using. And then I thought this was cool because this is not what I was expecting. I was like, oh yeah, he'll play with him more. And nope, Jabber walks up and is just okay, and stabs him through the chest. And it's all right, cool, good. Again, something I mentioned the last volume was that I like how a lot of the fights and the world is kept high stakes because death is real. When we had the guy falling out of the tower in the last volume, and here it's stakes are real. Your our boy Zonka, who we've been rooting for and cheering for and appreciating how cool he is, just got stabbed through the chest. It's real. It's dangerous.
Right. And Jabber seemingly disappointed. She goes all.
Yeah. And then we so we also get his vital instrument here. It it reverts to its original shape. I don't know if this is it losing power.
It is because you see the life drain from his eyes in the panel.
Yeah, that's the idea. The idea that I'm getting is a giver dies, their vital instrument loses its power, doesn't because its power comes from the connection or whatever. So yeah, that's what I think we're seeing here. Is that we're watching it's essentially trying to bait us into thinking Zonka's going to die. Like, I don't think he is, but
I don't think he is either. But we're not 100%, I guess.
Yeah. I would
It would be crazy if he did, though.
I mentioned this, we were talking before, but if they do the Demon Slayer bullshit where they like start cut, like Demon Slayer does this stupid thing that I cannot stand, where it's like you start cutting the bad guy's head off, you know that they've died, and then you flash back to their sad backstory, and then you cut back to their head being cut off, and it's like that's the worst time to put a flashback. I will be so mad if they do that. I don't think they're going to do that. I think that
that would be so.
This is going to inform somehow how Zonka gets back up and fights, or something that happens, right? So
I think so.
Yeah. So that is it for that. The next chapter here, Memories of an Average Joe. We are starting now with a full backstory of Zonka in the next 2 chapters. So this kind of isn't what I was expecting. When it kind of went into it, I was like, oh shit, we're getting full flashback backstory for Zonka right now. This was a good surprising thing. We are shown Zonka's father telling us about something that is called, where did it go? The Hell. Yeah, his family is like the shogun, like protectors of this kind of trash city realm. The Hell Guards, that's what they're called. Hell Guards are like, they're not the same as cleaners who fight against mainly trash beasts, right? Like that, the cleaners have been fighting against a lot of people, but their main job is to fight trash beasts. So the Hell Guards here are meant to protect people from other people. That is the main thing we're told about them.
And you think that's like a depiction of Cerberus in the background, or like what is that? Like, are they Oni? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Zonka's dad, I think, right, is telling us sort of like, we have noble blood. Yeah, everyone in our family has done this. We've all been, very successful. We like run the hell police or whatever. I don't know what the picture is trying to show us or tell us here. Maybe it comes into play later. Like maybe.
I think it's just for this scene. I think it looks like a Cerberus kind of.
This might
thing. Because it's the Guardian of Hell as well.
Yeah, this might be giving the graffiti artist guy something to draw in the volume.
Yeah,
it might just be that, right? She was like, Urana was probably like, "Hey, I need you to draw."
I'm gonna go with my guess then because it makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. There's sort of like a underground trash city, this is kind of the first, like I guess like real trash city we've seen.
Yeah. And this is this looks like Kyoto, kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. The Kamuatari district. It looks like old Japanese style, right? Which you can't get away from. But definitely, because the other cities we've seen, we saw the one where the doctor is, and then the one where the artist is. Those are sort of like seedy towns, I guess I would say. Like they're not like sort of like fully like places where people come from. They're like smaller, like seedy districts, I guess. But this is cool to see like a real kind of town with a style in it. Again, it's very cool. So
I agree.
So we learned basically that the Hell Guards they like have a school that they go to that teaches them and stuff. Zonka is following in his family's footsteps. He joins this school. Zonka's always at the top of his class, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting here because people are talking about like how good he is, and then he walks by these 2 kids that are talking. He's like, "Hey, rumor has it one of these new kids is crazy good." And it's like, boy or girl? It's like girl. It's like, wow, I wonder which one is her. And it's like Zonka hears that, and he thinks that he should be the best. So it is already implanting seeds in him. And then they keep talking like, "Oh, we'll never be as good as Zonka. We'll never reach his level." And then we get the best
they have
page.
resentment towards him. And I love this page because he's like, "Damn right, you fucking can't."
Yeah, this is the best. This is maybe the best face in the whole series so far. It's great.
I love it. Zonka is so cool, man. He's such a shithead.
It's also it's an interesting thing to watch a character, like to see a character develop the way they are and then flash back into who they were earlier. A lot of authors, I think, fail at this when they go, "Oh, they're just the same person earlier, but less power." But it's like, no, Zonka is like shittier now. Like I see crumbs of this in modern Zonka, in the Zonka we know from now too. But this is like, oh yeah, he's younger, he's shittier, he's more full of himself. He's a character that has not had growth yet, and I think that's a very good writing and very cool to see.
he has, yeah, and it's like it's coming from a very relatable place of this guy has worked really hard, and he like hides that he worked really hard, so he looks effortlessly good at everything. But he also thinks he's the best because he hasn't had his ego checked ever.
Yeah, he's always been the best.
Yeah,
that's interesting you point that out, though. When I was in high school, when I played instruments, my band director said that you can like practice and perform something and if it's really hard, if you make it sound really hard, that's not as impressive as if you play something really hard and make it sound like it's easy. And so I think that that's kind of what Zonka's doing here, right? It's like he wants everyone to think that he's having an easy time of it, even though he is actually trying his ass off to like really hard to do these things, because that's kind of what we know about him. So
I think your band director shouldn't give that advice.
No, he's one of the most influential people in my entire life. He was an incredibly smart guy.
I don't think you should lie about how hard or easy things are. You should just be honest.
Well, no, not lying about it. It was more about the performance of the thing, right? Like if you're playing something very hard and you can't perform it to where it sounds easy and it sounds hard when you play it, you haven't done enough, right? You need to keep practicing until you make it sound easy. It's just like a practice thing.
Okay.
Right? But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So we get told, I think, by one of the teachers here that there's more giver activity, so the Hellguards need to be stronger. I think maybe this has to do with the bandits kind of starting to take off here, maybe. It could just be nothing, but it might be like, oh, the bandits or the angel guy are like starting their stuff maybe 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. But yeah, so then we get an announcement, basically like they basically get the kind of the transfer student talk. Yeah, it's basically the transfer student talk from anime. It's like, hey, we've chosen to include in the class a person of exceptional talent, even though they're from the slums, which I guess is probably not normal for the Hellguards here. They're usually probably the upper class people.
Yeah,
I think this is interesting because I think the girl we meet is kind of classified as another discarded person, person from the slums, an unwanted person. So I think that potentially gives her some power here. Also, she looks badass. And yeah, Zonka's like, faced with the real deal, I was about to find out how weak and strong I really am. So this girl is gonna body him. So
yeah, exactly. It's coming.
Yeah. I gotta give a shout out here to how cool and badass all the girls in GACHIAKUTA are so far. There are less of them than the boys, but every time Seimu is awesome. I love Rio. I love the new electricity hair girl. I think this girl, Hyo, who we're about to meet, also looks like a badass. Like, all of the girls are badasses in this series, and it's very cool.
Yeah, I'd say, there may be less of them, but, not that many less. And I think every single one of them is incredibly memorable.
Yeah, and Amo, too, even.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So we now get to... this is the very last chapter, chapter 58. We are told about a golden chair, which is the sort of like the best trainee gets to sit in the golden chair. It's like the most on the nose direct, literally you could sit above people and look down from your golden chair that you are the best. There's no no subtlety in that. They're doing a contest of who can, do combat and take down everyone else. The girl easily beats every single person, including Zonka here. Again, she just looks freaking cool. Yeah, outmatched every student in the class. Very first mock battle. You were very skilled. The guys start pulling out Johns. I don't think I read that page, but the guys are we could have taken her. She has a weird style. She isn't as trained as we are. I'm used to fighting against trained people. This is the you lose against someone who's never played Smash Bros before, and you're they're just acting erratically. I never could beat them, but she's actually really good. She just is literally better trained and more skilled than all these guys. So
yeah, exactly.
So then we're introduced. Her name is Hyo. As they're you have a very real chance of reaching the Golden Throne. Again, her design is cool and sick, even though it's just traditional Japanese. Somehow it looks better than most traditional Japanese designs.
Yep.
She's also kind of very standoffish, just kind of leaves. The guys were sort of gossiping or whatever. Zonka goes off and is and
I don't even think she's standoffish. She's just staying in her own lane.
Yeah.
And is just winning a lot. But yeah, Zonka is... he outwardly, again, he's a bit dishonest. He says, but he's being a good sport outwardly. He's like, oh man, she was real tough. I didn't stand a chance. Looks like I got some work to do. Which,
he knows.
Honestly, just a cool thing to say, but inwardly he feels so like resentful and frustrated.
Yeah, this actually is, I think, a sort of good character trait to have in general, is that your actions speak louder than words, right? And though he is frustrated inside, to outwardly be like, she was really good and I didn't stand a chance. That's like, he's more complex than just, I'm actually a little brat and I'm better than everybody, right? It's like he knows that if you're the best, you have to be humble too. And so he's trying to portray that, even though that isn't how he feels. So I think that's cool.
And I think that's great. Yeah. He's just being a bigger person. And I think in the next page, it also shows this, even though he's like so clenchingly frustrated about it that he's like biting his lip to where it's bleeding. His thought process is that I didn't train hard enough. I can fucking beat her. I just did not train hard enough. And it's like he's internalizing his own problems instead of like he's not blaming her like the other kids are, like the other shitheads are, right? They're not, or making excuses. He's saying I haven't worked as hard as I could, and that's why I didn't win. Which I don't know. I respect that mindset.
Yeah, it's good.
Even though he's so pissed off about it.
And I think he still in the modern day, I think, keeps this outlook. Like, he isn't talking about like Chapter's too strong. He's talking about how strong he needs to be, and he's out of ideas. So he's very internally focused person, I think. So
I very much respect that.
Yeah.
Zanka's awesome.
But on the other hand, in this flashback, we also do kind of see that Zanka doesn't, in this part where he's sort of being frustrated and biting his lip and stuff, the way that he talks about being frustrated isn't really about, he doesn't want to be strong and be top of the class for him. He does want it for himself, but he wants to do that because he wants other people to see him as strong. He is not like, he's not like, I want to be the best for my own achievement. He's like, no, I want to be strong so that everybody else tells me I'm good, so that my dad knows that I'm good, or and stuff like that, right? He's very externally focused on the reason I need to be successful is so that other people find me successful, which is more of a toxic kind of way to look at it. So.
Exactly. And that's well said, because it's what the girl brings up, right? It's like, why do you care what?
It's like, why do you care what other people think? Like, just be good, just be strong.
And it's like even though he has like all of these, he's a hard worker and he only blames himself anytime he loses or whatever. He's still hiding that he's a hard worker because he wants to be perceived as him doing it effortlessly, because he cares about the perception of others more than his own personal growth.
Yeah,
he's like prioritizing it a little higher.
And also, I think shows that he wasn't necessarily always looking to better himself to get better. He was like, I will be as good as I need to be top of the class and no better. And then when someone better shows up, he's frustrated because he didn't actually try to be better than he was. He just tried to be better than everybody else. So,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, here's Hyo and Zanka kind of talking. It's like, she just does not care about the chair. She's completely opposite of him. She does not care about the chair or how other people see her or whatever. She's like, you just want people to tell you you're an amazing person. You don't actually want to be an amazing person, which is sort of exactly what we're saying. So yeah, I like her so far, and I think it's clear. It's becoming more clear why Zanka flashed back to this girl during the fight 2 or 3 chapters ago, because he knows that he's like getting outmatched again, and hopefully potentially he's going to learn how he has to outdo that. So
yeah, and I essentially right. He starts seeing, like, he complains about how, like, when the real deal comes along, all these fakes start showing up and showing his classmates copying this new girl, the number one, her haircut, and then trying to steal her techniques.
Yeah.
And then other people just doing nothing but complaining about it. Must be nice to have life on easy mode. And the biggest fake, of course, is himself. And I like that. When he said in the jobber fight, he's like, I still have to prove it. I wonder if he means, like, in that moment, if he wanted to prove to himself, to prove to her that he is going to kind of improve himself for himself, or is he trying to prove it to himself, right? Like, because her point is that you should stop considering so much what other people think about you and just work on yourself.
Yeah.
Is he still trying to chase her approval, or is he trying to chase his best self, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're talking
I
about
can't
this
die
where
until I prove it.
he flashes
Yeah.
back to Hyo and is like, I can't die until I prove it. I think
Yeah.
this is, I think you've hit on that. He has to prove that he is the real deal, because I think the
Yeah.
reason that the volume ends with this section here where he's talking about like when the real deal comes along, it gets real easy for the fakes to start degenerating. And yeah, like you mentioned, there's fakes that copy the real deal, fakes that steal from the real deal, and fakes that sit around bad-mouthing the real deal. It makes me sick. And then he internalizes it, right, with the thing that makes me most sick is the fake who has the audaciousness to think he's different from all the other fakes, aka me. He knows that he's a fake, and he thinks he wants to think he's different and better, but he knows that he's not, which is a sad, self-depreciating thing, but the truth. So,
my favorite character so far. I find him so relatable.
I think we're getting this flashback is not nearly as much of a downer as Amos was, and Amos was very sort of I mean, it was character focused, but it was also plot related. It was to sort of introduce her shoes and the angel and the two masked guys and to kind of show us those things that are important. This one is like just about Zanka and who he is and why he is this way. So
it weaves like a lot of different things, and it's like about self-respect too, right? Like external validation. It works a lot of things in without saying it too explicitly. I think it just works really well with the amount of pages given.
And I think it's great. We also have, of course, the very end of the chapter, first appearance of his staff as the sort of basic wooden U-shaped thing here.
One of those is a gun.
Yeah, there is just a gun here. We've seen guns. We saw a rocket launcher last volume, so.
Yeah, but it's just really funny thinking of all these like niche vital instruments, and one guy's just like, I love my gun.
Yeah. Well, I when I was reading this, when I saw Hyo the first time in the little flashback scene where she has a katana, I was like, oh no, we talked about this. Like, what happens when someone's vital instrument is a katana? I don't think that's what we're gonna get, but it'll be interesting if we do.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I think this is like relatable. This is relatable to me personally from like years and years ago. Like I was always like a top of the class kid, like, you know, or like up through probably like 6th or 7th grade. It was like I was the top. I want to be the smartest. I always tried my hardest to be the smartest. And when I was in, I think like 3rd or 4th grade, I think it was 4th grade, it was like, oh yeah, like Bruce is the smartest in the class. He's the best. He does all the tests. You know, I'm like 9, right? And a girl transfers in and starts like matching and beating my scores. And I had like a crisis at 9 from that happening. Because it was like, no, like I'm the smart one. I'm on top. Everyone knows I'm the best in the class. And this transfer girl just like shows up and starts getting as good or better scores than me. Like, and the sad thing is when you're a child, you don't realize that like, well, that person should be my friend because we're the same and we're both intelligent and I should get to know her, which is like how an adult me thinks about it now. But back then it was just like, I hate her. I never want to interact with her. I want her gone. I didn't like.
Exactly. Because you can't, it's like, it's a crisis of identity, right?
Exactly. Which is like, so reading this about Zanka, I was like, bro, I know literally exactly how you feel because I like remember that happening to me in school. Like younger than Zanka is here, but like I remember when you think you're the best and someone else shows up and is equally as good or better than you, and it is absolutely like a crisis, and you have to learn how to deal with it. And I definitely think that it caused me to grow and caused me to be less concerned about being top of the class and just being as good as I could be.
I have 100% been there, and I think it's like a lot of nerds go through this. It's because it's like, oh yeah, those jocks, they might be like hot and popular and whatever, but I'm very smart. And then like someone comes by and checks the one thing you value about yourself, and you're like, oh fuck, I'm nothing now. And it's like, and instead of like reasoning it out, a lot of people get like not vengeful, but like resentful.
You get angry
about
it.
At yourself and others. And I think this is not just relatable to us, but I think Zanka's plight here is relatable to a lot of like just nerdy dudes as a whole.
Yeah. And a lot of people I think who tie their identity to success in some way, who then someone out succeeds them, that is it is a dangerous thing to tie your identity to, again, to an external validation, right? My validation was coming from
this.
My validation was coming from getting good grades and the teacher telling me I'm smart and the other kids telling me I'm smart, and being so tied to that and having it rocked, like it is worse when you tie your personality into that.
Exactly. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Zanka dies after this, I'd be so pissed. Dude.
There's no way, right? Like,
no way,
surely
no,
not.
impossible,
Yeah.
impossible. It would be
Cool.
bad writing. It would be a bad subversion.
Yeah. So that's it for volume 7. I incorrectly called the last volume 7 a couple times. So sorry, apologies for that. This is volume 7. Any more overall feelings? I've got a couple things, Captain, but if you want to bring up one or two, if you've got anything about the volume.
Nah, I said my piece. I think it was a great volume.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I just want to bring up again, like, I expected the fights to be good, and I thought there were. I was not expecting the mastery of cutting between scenes by like connecting dialogue and connecting references to the characters whose scene we're jumping to. That is like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I've read many series that are good enough to actually pull that off and have it work as well as it did in the first 4 or 5 chapters here. I thought that really blew my mind. Like, yes, the action paneling was good. Yes, the choreography was good. But the part that really stunned me in this volume was the like, oh yeah, we know someone who did like getting poop on him. Bam, cut to Zanka. Or like, oh yeah, check your collars. Boom, cut to another character checking their collar. Like that kind of stuff to me, that's so creative. And so it just improves it to like another level. Because something that is really worrying is that a lot of series are not particularly good at handling multiple viewpoints and jumping between them, multiple scenes. This is something that My Hero Academia, I'll bring up again, just so we talked about it. Like the ending of My Hero Academia was jumping between 3 or 4 fights at the same time. It didn't do it as quickly as these chapters did, but it would just cut to them when it cut to them, right? Like there was no sort of like, here's the next scene to transition into it. There was none of these transition things going on, none of these references between the scenes, like none of that. Just cut to the next scene. I think One Piece is particularly bad at this, I will say. I love One Piece with all my heart, but a lot of times if there's too many scenes going on, it's jumping between them, it's hard to keep track of. So I was really, really impressed with that in this volume of GACHIAKUTA. So
I agree. Yeah, I think I feel like One Piece has big cash problems in a lot of its fights. For sure. That's why when I think Oda ends up finishing side fights quite often, just to eliminate the big cast problems. But hey, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Something else I like that this volume, I like that it started really high energy and then kind of settled into this flashback, like slowed down a little bit. I mean, we've brought up a bunch. GACHIAKUTA, actually not that much action for being an action battle shonen. I do like that we got probably the most action in this volume. Maybe back with volume 2 or 3 where we had the first Jabber fight. But the slowdown in the flashback was like maybe I like that even more.
It means more. You know, like when we have context and we have investment in the fights, they mean more. So I'm into it. Absolutely.
I mean, this is very much providing context to how and why I assume Zanka is going to beat Jabber here, right? And I think it's important for him to beat Jabber here in some way because to me it feels personally important to reinforce that hard work trumps natural born genius like every day. It doesn't always in the real world, but I think that people need to be told that that's true because you don't see other people's hard work. And so it's hard to tell when, wow, they're so good at that. It's like, yeah, because they've spent thousands of hours doing it, probably.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Almost no one is born a piano player, right? They have to practice it.
Yeah.
Even if they're 6 years old and you think they're a prodigy, they're not. Their parents have made them spend thousands of hours playing piano, and that's why they're so good at 6. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me if you agree with this or not. I think you do. Every additional volume of GACHIAKUTA we read, I am like falling deeper in love with it. Like this series, I was expecting a pretty good, decent, fun read through. I was not expecting it to be this good. And every time I read more, I'm like, I was not expecting it to be this good at so many different things at the same time. Like this is really, really good series.
It's really great. It's really great. And I can see, I don't think it has the mass appeal of a Jujutsu Kaisen. And I understand why.
Yeah,
but,
a little more stylized, a little more specific.
And it's a way slower burn. I think people who are in it just for the fights will bounce off.
Yeah, again, way less action than I was expecting. Is a thing that I see as a positive because I think it's good at the fights that happen.
Me too.
Better at character stuff. So, yeah.
But I also it just gets better and better. So I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yep, I'm excited. Cool. Anything else on volume 7 here of GACHIAKUTA?
Nope. That's about it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for listening or watching. Next week will be volume 8 of continued discussions. Be sure, again, check out the Patreon if you want to support us, and if you want to get more book clubs throughout the year, go and support that. You can check out Twitter to see more of my thoughts and posts. If you're a weekly manga reader of stuff like Shonen Jump, our weekly Shonen magazine, which publishes GACHIAKUTA, go and check out our Weekly Manga Podcast that's published on this channel. And I think that is it for this episode of the GACHIAKUTA Book Club read-through. So, adios.
See you later.
And don't forget to read more manga.